Okay, now let's begin with how we can improve this code structure. So here, since we are implementing an app.js file, what we will do is like create a new folder here with the name of, let's say, services, and inside this services folder we will create another file here with the name of Axios API.js. Then we will create another API which will be called like Axios helper methods.js, and then inside of this Axios API we will import Axios from Axios, and then we will import request error handler, comma, request interceptor. I will explain these later on, just import it. Response error handler, response interceptor from Axios helper methods. Currently we haven't created these methods, so just bear with me for a few more minutes. Constant Axios here, Axios dot create. Basically we are creating an interceptor. I mean, like, we are creating a general method for Axios, like initializing a generally for Axios so that we can have single base URL. So here we can define a base URL, and this base URL basically comes from, let's say you have a constant file or you have a configure env files. These can come up from there as well. So our base URL was, this is our base URL. And then just add the base URL here, and then what we will going to do is like Axios API dot interceptors dot request dot use request interceptor and request handler. Similarly, we can have like Axios dot interceptors dot response dot use response interceptor response error handler. So now what we have done is like we have just created a basic single method where we have initialized base URL. This base URL can come from any of your source, like any constant file or any maybe from env file, and then we have created separate helper methods for interceptors, like for request interceptor and response interceptor. So what request interceptor do is like, before calling a request to our server, this will request intercepted, so that we can change, we can add authorizations and other stuff, and then this will be moved to our, like, calling our class where we have called Axios API. Similarly goes with response interceptor. So now let's move to Axios helper methods. Here what we will do is like, we have to first of all just create a function, it's called, let's say, constant let's create what it's called request interceptors. This is going to be async method. No, we don't need async. It's config. So here we can have, like, let's say if we have access token here, this can be, if since we are not implementing authorization in our current API, so we won't be using this, but this is for your reference. If we got an access token, we can check, like, if the access token is not equals to null, then we can, like, config dot headers, and maybe we can add, like, auth. If we have implemented auth or bearer token, whatever the key is, we can add it here, right? And then if we have other methods for configuration, we can add as well, like XAPI or maybe some other stuffs. Okay, then we can also console the request we can also console our config methods and header as well with base URL. So to do that, we can do is, like, headers what will be our method. If it's going to be put, get, post, delete, config dot method. Config dot base URL. Are we using, let me check what's this URL plus config dot URL. This is going to be, like, if we append our base URL, then this is going to be the appended URL. And then simply return config. So this is our helper method for the request interceptor. Since we need to export these methods, so add export constant. Also, now for the response interceptor, this was request interceptor, now response interceptor, export constant response. So we can, like, so basically we can intercept the response, like what we have sent, maybe methods, URL, headers, then response as well. What is the status code of the response? Then we can print the response as well. So we don't need to print, on every calling class. We can do, like, console.log. We will distinguish what is request, console.log, what are the headers, config dot headers. Then we can have console.log method config dot method. Then we can also have URL config dot base URL plus config dot URL. And now let's go for response. Console dot response. Here console dot log status. Then we can print what our response would be. So this is going to be config.data. So this is our response interceptor. Now we have to create response error handler, then request error handler. So in response in response error handler, we will handle like if our authorization is expired, let's say our Axios token got expired, then we need to call another token which is called refresh token. Like we have to refresh our token to get what you can say is like to fetch this current happening this current failed request, right? So we need to do that as well. So we can do that here as well. So what is needed is in here is like let's create export constant response handler. We can simply do is like here we can alert the user what we got the error. So so this is basically the failed configuration, right? So here, and let's say let's handle 401 error API response here, error dot status. Although this 401 thing won't work with current the scenario, as we are using CRUD API request. So this is like for your knowledge that might help you guys. So we try, which means if the response status code is 401, which means the request is unauthorized. So what we need to do is like we need to call another API to get the new token and then pass this failed request. User Then what we can do is like return refresh token API call. Right, so basically what will happen, like when we will refresh this token API call, then after getting the new request, and then after getting the authorization tokens, then we will call this failed request again, so that user don't know what happened, but somehow this will happen in background. Also we can check for other status code as well here, and we can also show error messages to the user simply by alert error. Then after doing all this, we will basically return promise reject error object. Then we have to handle request error handler, export constant handler. Error. This is how we will going to handle our requests. You can see here, if we go to Axios API, we have now request interceptors, request error handler, response interceptor, and then response error handler as well. So this is how we going to call refresh token. I just forgot to mention one more thing, which is a key point when I was doing this calling refresh token API. Then I spent a lot of time. I have spent a lot of time figuring out what happened. So basically, when you will be calling, you need to create another Axios. Like a new Axios instance to call for refresh token, and then return that Axios token. Then return that Axios request. So basically, it's like we have this function. Let's say call refresh token. Okay, and let's say we got the refresh token, right? Then we have to pass. So basically what we'll do is like Axios, this is going to be a new instance of Axios, new instance of Axios. Okay, then basically Axios that post request simply follows all the Axios like API calling request. So we have to do this as well, and then response, and then in the response of this we'll get new access token. Let's use what we have implemented yet. So here create a new folder with the name of, let's say, APIs. Inside of this create files like users, user API. And inside of this what we will do is like we will create a functions, let's say import, first of all Axios API, Axios from Axios API. I think we haven't. Yeah, so basically I haven't exported it yet, so we need to export it yet as well. So let's do that. then export Axios API, and we have to replace this Axios API as well here. Export default API, and then users API. You can see we got what we have exported. So user API, what we will do is like we will be creating functions. So let's put constant get users list, simply Axios dot Axios API dot get. Then we have like the endpoint, right? So now what we are doing is like we will be passing you can see the params, right? So the base URL is we have created here is this, but now we need endpoints. So basically in users API we will be passing the endpoints, which is users. You can see here that in app.js we have this base URL and then users. So basically if we go to Axios API, you will see here this is the base URL and these are the endpoints for the users. So this is the users, right? And then we will going to return Axios API dot get the endpoint, right, for get user list. Now similarly we need get users by ID. Okay, and for that we need an ID, which is user ID. So we will pass that as well. Return Axios API dot get. Similarly with that, users slash user ID, and then we can create another method which is for constant get not get add a new user. Okay. So for that we need like params and simply return Axios API dot post, then users comma params, which will going to be like if you go to app.js, which is this params, we will pass it here. Okay, similarly we can create a put request and delete request. So now let's test this out as well. So here in app.js we need to import that user by ID. We need to import get users list. Then we need to import add a new user. Okay, and now instead of this we will use get user list dot then catch response error. if I call this thing here inside this, you will see we will fetch the data. As you can see here, what we are doing, we have intercepted the request. You can see we have, let's check out the difference what we have done so far. Okay, I have removed that. You can see here this is the most simplest form of what we were doing here. And what are the benefits of adding interceptor is like we don't need to console everything, right? So we have just console in interceptor, and then you can see what kind of like information we are getting. Like if we see here, we have the method is get request. This is the best approach while you are like debugging your API request. What is the URL we have sent? Then request methods, what are the headers we have set for now, since we have set x auth to empty. And then what is the method name, URL, response, status code, and then what we got the response. Like this is the best approach I can go for. And you can also see what I can say is like how simpler it get. So for this as well, we can do is like get users by ID. We need to set an ID here. So for ID, let's say okay, let's fetch this ID. Then you can simply copy paste that as well. Now if I sorry ID, I call this here, user by ID, and then pass this user ID. You will see we will fetch the specific user detail. You can see here we got the error 404 because the issue is like maybe something we need to figure it out. So yes, this one more thing that you can see here, I haven't added an alert on every request. I added the alert on request error handler, which is here. So we don't need to add multiple alerts on every request. If we didn't implement the interceptor, then we have to add error alerts on every catch call. So this is one of the another benefit of using what you can say is of using interceptors. User ID here, we got the user ID. Sorry, this was the users. We have put the wrong endpoint. Now you will see we have got the response as well. So this is how you can implement response interceptors here. This is the benefits of one of the benefits of using interceptors. You don't need to add everything and on every call just add to interceptors, then rest of the thing will be done by interceptor. Thank you for watching UA Studios.